clarify that the asterisk in the video would be because I had the address on the wall speaking a fair amount of content on the account because I didn't bother doing it. Similarly, that translates to the second reason why the video will be short, which actually didn't mention that. Oh well. Is that I think that in terms of the plausible team that you would like to play Kirara with, there's really only one, which is Haitham, which I don't know, which is why it results in me not really playing Nilou with Haitham in Kirara as much. So first and foremost, what do I think that this is like really the only team worth playing Kirara in, where she is basically mostly your best option. I guess you could still make the argument for Yaya, although I wouldn't really. To be clear though, the first and foremost thing you have to acknowledge is that Kirara I think needs her C4 for this to work, and it is a largely single target team. Okay, let me check. It's a concept that allows her to apply an instance of danger from the field. That's basically when you attack. Yeah, when characters protected by her shield, yeah, it's her C4. Her C6 does also help with Haitham a lot. Well, not a lot, because I'm pretty sure Yao does. For the sake of this video, who you will compare Kirara with for such a team, although I'm considering it will likely be other defensive options, right? And it's fun talking about defensive options for Nilou because she arguably has the only team in the game which actually strictly needs defensive utility if you do choose to focus on bloom damage, which is, to be fair, not every bloom team, but I mean not every team, but a fair amount at least. Right. So assume that your bloom generation is enough that you would justify running a defensive unit. Right? And Yao and Kirara's buff probably would not be that different. Yao, I'm pretty sure, yeah. She can restore stamina, which is actually pretty somewhat helpful, but also grants a 15% damage bonus, which is also helpful for items. But as for where Kirara I think shines over Haitham is the fact that she can, because right, so let's compare like defensive options later, right? Which would just be these two, because that's who you're gonna be comparing her with. You should ignore the tiers that they don't need to. Right. Why is it that I think that Kirara is realistically only being played with Haitham is because, I mean, again, I have to clarify that you can play what you like. It's just that you want to talk about like a best in slot option or like a side grade that has a reason as a side grade beyond just I want to play it, right? So when you think of Kirara, you think of double. Like you obviously think of double danger. In fact, you can think of that for most high or reasonable bloom gen team. If it's solo dendro, then it has to be Nahida. Like there's no denying that. And then if it's double dendro, then it can be a variety of things. In fact, it can be, if it's double dendro, it can really be almost any double dendro. It's just that, of course, the efficacy will differ, and generally speaking, double dendro that doesn't involve Nahida is either worse or has to usually incorporate some form of talent damage. Because when you don't run Nahida, like we've been through this song and dance, if you run Nahida, then your other one has to be a defensive unit, and then if it's gonna be Kokomi, then it frees up your last one to be a Hydro, and then okay. What is double Dendro's efficacy? There's a lot of it, but a lot of the times, if you are running Nahida, then Kole. Okay, wait, I need to look. Is this still gonna be a shorter video because I have to admit that I have less experience. But the fundamental idea is that when you run Nahida, your second Dendro, whether or not it's a defensive option, it's gonna be Kale. Like in terms of double Dendro, if you already have Nahida, there is almost never a reason not to be running Kale, Yao Yao, or Baichu, right? And the thing is, I've already made my case about why I don't think you should be running Kale. but the point is, because the title of this video is about Kirara, the point is that, okay, you would never play any of the shitters in the C tier. They're not actually in C tier. Again, let's just call it as it is. You'll never run any of the shitters in the C tier with Nahida, right? Because they will either be worse than Kalei, or like different, or like not a defensive unit. Because those are be the only two considerations you make. Three, I guess, Traveler. Okay, it's too niche. No, Traveler, like you can argue for like a max uptime, but like nothing. But like these teams aren't like really that high damage, so like okay, no, not Traveler. Too niche. It's too niche to talk about. So it has to, and so it has to be Kalei if you don't want a defensive option or the defensive option. And then why isn't Kirara added in here? Well, why would Kirara be added in here? That would be the better question, right? Because when you add Kirara into these, like, what do you get logically out of Kirara that you don't get out of Baichu or Yao Yao, right? If you want, because adding her doesn't necessarily free up your Hydro unit to be a non-defensive option, correct? Compared to Kalei. Like, if you want to like just make the comparison with Kalei for now, like would she ever be better than Kalei? Like and the answer is no. Kalei is like literally just her but better in every single way except defensive utility. And then when you think about it, like okay, you replace Kalei with Kirara and you get that defensive utility. Does that mean that you will actually be able to run a more offensive a more offensive Hydro unit? And the answer is kind of that yeah, you can do this, right? And then this should work if you do Nahida driver. But then like you then come to this like, same song and dance that we've been through before, right? Where it's like, okay, in AoE, why would you do this when you can run Kokomi instead of Kirara? And then in single target, you really want sustained Dendro application. So then you would rather have Kalei. And then sorry, this is a bit weird. Okay, so if you run something like this, right, then she's your defensive utility. Then you have to compare it to what if your defensive utility was a Kokomi instead, right? Which makes sense. And Kirara Singtio with Nahida Nilou. Does this team actually perform any better than like Kokomi Kalei? Like because you are only comparing between Kirara and Kalei right now. I'm not like that is something I want to get into later. Yo-Yo and Baichu especially. And well, not respectively, but with that. And then the answer is like really not really, because her talent-based damage doesn't really help, of course, in this team. Like yeah, sure, it kind of helps Nahida. It gives her that Dendro damage bonus, right? Wait, how does it even work? Like, is it just okay? Yeah, it's all elemental damage bonus. So it will help Nahida, yeah, and like, Nahida's the one on fielding. But then there is already an issue with that in the sense that you want Kirara to be on Golden Truth. I mean, sorry, you want Kirara to be the one on Deep Boot so that you can give Nahida Golden Truth, and then if you're on fielding Nahida, like your Golden Truth efficacy is a lot less. Yeah, there's no denying that. And then if you don't, and then because it's not Kalei, you don't really have like that consistent level of Dendro application that would be enough to not let Singtio override. So in that sense, like it's not like Kalei level unless you're onto it. So you're kind of left with like needing to onto Nahida. At which point it's like it's kind of a somewhat nerf Nahida, so to speak. So why not just like skip that song and dance and play this, right? So in this kind of team, I don't think you can really justify running Kirara like as a direct comparison to Kalei, because I think that you will start running into that issue where like your off-fielder will either apply too much Hydro, or you have to start on-fielding Nahida, which is already like somewhat dangerous in itself, because a no-healer team means that yeah, you have a shielder, but you cannot really regen health if it is lost. And then you have to build Kirara on full HP, you have to give her devote, your Golden Troops efficacy on Nahida is lesser. And again, I guess technically Nahida's damage isn't actually that the end all be all, right? But if you take that into consideration, then because you are at the end of the day you only have 2 hydros, so how do I say? There's a lot of factors that goes into it, as you can tell, right? But the point is that I think you will lose more from running Kirara Sing 2, even if you don't mind the fact that you don't have a healer, compared to if you just ran Kokomi, Kale, and then you onto the Kokomi. Then there's also that. And then there's also the factor that, of course, like in single target, the Sing2 Kirara team, it would probably work actually pretty well, no denying that. But then it would suffer in AoE, but then it would suffer in AoE compared to this team, right? Because it's Sing2 at the end of the day. And then when you think about so this is the better AoE team. And then when you think about single target, again, it's like you need Nahida to drive. I mean, you will still need Nahida to drive either way. But do you actually? I should probably load the music. Give me a moment. What was I? Oh yeah, right. But in single target, like, can you really say that like Kirara Nahida is going to provide that much more than a Kale for me? Especially when you consider that Kirara has to be built full HP, but Kale can be built talent damage, and then you can't really discount that fact because she, like, her burst and her E, they have like somewhat decent scalings at the very least, right? So you can play either. It's just that, again, you kind of have to jump through hoops for this Kirara Sing2 team, and I don't think that the performance increase is really justified just for you, like if you are to jump through all those hoops. So as that kind of option, if you are like trying to consider between like Kale and Kirara, if you want your defensive option to be Kirara, I mean, if you want a more offensive hydro, like while still playing double dendro, like actually then that gets me to my next point, doesn't it? Where it's like, it's not like okay, now that we've acknowledged that it isn't really a better idea for you to run like defensive dendro with offensive hydro, like when at least when your defensive is Kirara. But let's say you are like, at least in the Nahida team, right? And of double dendro. Okay, fucking hell. I think I got better since the last video, but it's still really shaky. What was I saying? Kirara. Right, so you kind of have to jump through hoops for her to be your defensive option in the Nahida team. There's no denying that, right? And then because again your Nahida has to drive, and then again it's somewhat of a song and dance, and then again your Nahida's that like personal damage isn't that high, and then you start wondering again, it's a double dendro team. In AoE Nahida can solo sustain dendro again, and then in single target, like, Nahida can't really solo sustain triple hydro, but that also means that why not just like if you're but she can sustain this core, so it means that Kirara's ability to apply like talent damage is already like kind of low, but I guess it's still somewhat significant with the 12%. But it's also the fact that like if you really wanted a defensive unit, and then you don't want to make like application any more of an issue, unironically I could recommend Citrine as a viable option, just because all you really need is a healer, and you don't want like, because all you really need is a healer. In fact, it might even still be an upgrade, just because like Nahida will easily solo sustain through all of this anyways, but I guess not many people put Citrine, so it's kind of like not a very great suggestion, I would say. I still recommend Kokomi though, Jesus Christ. Even in single target, I think this is a great thing, but like because Nahida may not be able to like truly solo sustain it, but she can still do it like really, really well for a lot of it. But yeah, so back to the original point, meaning that I don't like, if you wanted to compare it as an option against like offensive double dendro, then it's not really that efficient, right? At least in the Nahida team. So yeah, that means that in a Nahida team, you shouldn't really be playing Kirara, Baichu, or Yao Yao, or like. I wanted to almost say at all, but. Fuck. Something else just came up in mind, sorry. There are actually times where you want to play them together. But how do I phrase this? Okay, wait. Oh, wait. No, that is the next part. Right. So, if you wanted to compare her to an offensive option, it's kind of like an unfair option because. But I will say that I think that she is generally worse. And like at least if you were to play her with Nahida, if you wanted to use her as like a more, like if you wanted to compare her to our offensive options against like in the Nahida team, she is not that great until you factor in the idea that your other teammate can be okay, yeah, she is not that great if you want to. She is not that great compared to Kalei because Kalei gets like if you ignore the defensive aspect of her, right? But you can't ignore the defensive aspect of her. So that means that you get an offensive Hydro, so which is actually pretty damn good, right? In fact, I would argue that sometimes this can even perform better than Kalei Kurumi. Sometimes it's largely in like single target situations actually because Sing 2 has like really great application and so forth. But and then this is the point where okay, then you want to compare against other defensive options, right? Which is actually where I was about to get to next, which would be D3, right? At least this is like the context of a Nahida team. And then, is she any better than Paichu? Like I feel like that's a really simple, that's a trick question. The answer's like pretty much no, you know? Like she doesn't really provide anything that Paichu can't, especially because Paichu also has that tiny buff, which like matters more in this kind of team compared to Kirara, and then like their ability to apply deep wood is both also what you call it, largely single target. I say largely because Kirara can kind of bypass it with the ult sometimes. You don't want to use the whole E state because it does waste quite a bit of time. But assuming your Nahida isn't on deep wood, wait. Actually, to be fair, I think your Nahida should be on deep wood. I think it's just like a lot more convenient to set up, a lot faster, so on and so forth. But there are some times where in double Dendro where you don't want it. And even, not even sometimes. In fact, if you do it, like I wouldn't fault you. It's just that personal. I think this isn't something I can justify, so therefore I wouldn't fault anyone for doing it. But deep wood Nahida generally is just really damn good. There's no way around it. Although that does mean that like the sets that you have available on your defensive units tend to not be that great because they won't be triggering blooms, so what do you really do them with? Kalei has that same issue where like it's not as where that set that she ends up with if it isn't deep wood, and like a lot of the times deep wood won't be consistent because you don't want to start with her, and the same can be said for a lot of these actually. And then you build her on Emblem, but it's like okay, it's Emblem Kalei, but like it's not in a threat team or anything, so like the damage is like it's okay, it's not like, but it's not as good as like if someone had like an ideal artifact set, right? Or like if she worked perfectly with a GT Nahida, but I don't think, but like it's hard to work with a GT Nahida sometimes. But anyways, yeah, so Kirara doesn't really provide anything that Paichu cannot, except like full interaction resistance, and like a slight buff. But again, that slight buff matters a lot less in the context of Nahida because again, her talent damage is significantly worse than Haitham, who I will get onto later. And again, like Paichu has this. It's not like he has no AOE, right? It's just that it's a bit random because the strand. I mean, if you have like a lot of enemies, then like okay, there was like one of this in was it 3.7, 3.8, something like that, where like there were like 5 rift hounds, like, and then they were all like rushing at you. In which case, like yeah, Paichu's like really like there's kinds of situations where it's like you just want to like mash Kirara out and then like shove deep on all of them, call it, and like on one hand that's fine, on the other hand that's also AoE, so I'm not even sure why you're not playing triple Hydro. Okay, wait, no. I should get off triple Hydro. Okay. And then in those situations, yeah, technically, Kirara will be great. But also, I'm pretty sure, but also like Kirara is largely, it's not that great in terms of a deep wood application, in terms of AoE, especially in multi-wave, because her burst is kind of just a one-time thing. You won't be able to continually do it. Like and that's why her C4 is so helpful, because it counts as deep wood application. But But if you have like multi-target with like really high HP, then sure, you out once, and then 8 seconds later your deep wood's gone, and then what? Your C4 will apply onto one of them, but it won't apply onto both of them, and that's where the issues come in. Baichu will not have that same kind of issue because you can just run back, because if you're running a flexible Nilou team, which you kind of should. I mean, most of the teams are like generally flexible and you can adapt for them. The same can be said for most teams, truth be told. It's just that I think Nilou teams especially have this advantage. But yes, Baichu doesn't suffer from that same issue because if it is like two targets, then it's pretty consistent. Like the strand will bounce back and forth. 3 targets gets really inconsistent. But then both Kirara and Baichu will suffer for it. But in those situations, that's where I think that also I forgot to mention, Baichu and Yao also have healing, which is like really good for Kirara, which is really good compared to Kirara. Makes it so that mistakes kind of can be fixed. Because in the events that your shield breaks, then it's not like the damage you take will be permanent, blah blah blah. I need a drink water. Because I'm well hydrated, as you can see it. Same. But now, does this thing have cast damage? I'm pretty sure it does. Yeah, it does. But if you're really that concerned about AoE application, you could just run Yao instead. And again, like most of these you can, like in the context of Nahida, you would probably be running with Xingqiu because I think he is the best hydro offensive option you could have in this kind of scenario. And the nice thing about Xingqiu and Yao by virtue of her ult makes it so that like AoE application is much more consistent, much more and much longer lasting because her ult just like shoves deep wood fucking everywhere. And then if you have a C6 where like she chucks out like an especially big radish that like has larger AoE, it's also really helpful, it's great. I know that one of my favorite Raiden slash Hu Tao slash Maulani slash Nilou runner, Britain, actually no, I'll just type out their name. It's like BR_I10, right? Is it B_I? Okay, whatever. They are I know that they hate Yao. It's whatever, right? But you cannot, but in these sorts of situations, you cannot really deny her if it, and actually I was about to say, yeah, right, that's what I was about to say. And if you ask them about Yao, they'll probably, at least according to another one of my friends, who I recently spent an hour and a half, okay, I need to go on a short tangent. I recently had to spend like an hour and a half on my friend's account, like trying to fix an energy issue he had in a run. Which I did eventually fix after that 1.5 hours, right? It got him 16 seconds on the fat part, which is 12-3, when like his other strategy would have been like 17, not 17, would have been like 19-20 seconds. So yeah, I'm pretty proud of that. So that's for my friend in question, right? And then he did get a 16-second run, which was extremely annoying. But the point is that I want to mention that like 1.5 hours, I was just thinking to myself, I swear the average Maulani run takes lesser time than this to complete, like because it's Maulani. Okay. Yeah, that's the tangent. I had to mention it because he is the person who has told me that Britain is the kind of person who, when they hear about Yao, which you might hear from them sometimes if you're in if you're in Jamie's Discord, right, about Nilou sometimes. If they tell you that Yao is terrible, like, they have their reasons, but it's not. And in the context of speedrunning, I think Yao is terrible for the record. It's just that as a general idea of Yao being in a Nilou team, it's actually really damn solid. Yeah, but back to the point, really solid AoE, and it's like pretty constant as well, especially if you have a C6. And then her ult as well, like, especially if you run Xingqiu, right, who like, after you E, like, doesn't really have that much benefit from being the one to stay on field. So afterwards, you can Yao out, and then this is the point where it's like, in AoE, Yao is better than Baichu because like, she applies deep wood far more consistently, but then in the context, but if deep wood application isn't an issue, then I think Baichu is better, and then because then you can just like E out, sometimes not even out, and then just swap back to Nahida and then start doing like CAs and shit. But although that's not really necessary when in this team you don't have that much hydro per se. But anyways, Yao is a really considerable option for these kinds of things as an AoE option. So, and it's far better than Kirara and Baichu in both senses. So And you can't even really argue that Kirara is like a good in-between between single target and AoE, because it's like such a specific situation where you need like enough enemies, but you also yeah. Actually, wait. Okay, basically, when like you have some single target chambers that like you think Kirara would really be that good over Yao Yao in, which is basically never, by the way, because it's not like they even share a different role, right? Other than like the interruption resistance. In fact, if we are going to talk about Haitham, I could even say that Yao Yao's buff would be better. It's just that she doesn't really require you to swap into her as much. Actually, no, even Yao Yao. How do I say? It's like more instant. That's a better way of putting it. Like, and also having Kirara grants more few times than Nahida. It's just that, but in the context of this team, it doesn't really matter, right? And also like Yao Yao's healing, if like in this team, like it's fine if she outs, because then you can still proc all of Conceal stuff. She's still applies enough Dendro. But in the teams which I'm about to cover, you don't really want to Yao Yao out. Takes away few time of other characters. So in those other teams, and this is the fun part, then her defensive utility becomes somewhat of a significant issue, because then, in my experience, like your Bloom recall will be a bit hard for Yao Yao to deal with. In fact, you already see that pretty commonly in a lot of runs where like this exact team is involved, like Nilou, Nahida, Yao Yao, Xingqiu, where it's like you would think that just shoving a Yao Yao E would be enough defensive utility, but no, Nahida's like literally on, what's the phrase? On death's door, yes. Sorry. But the point is, with Nahida, you would like probably require like way too specific of a situation for Kirara to ever be useful against Baichu or Yao Yao, who I think Baichu is like generally the best option if you want like deep wood application, if you don't want deep wood application problems, because in these kinds of things you might as well just build GT Nahida, but if you have 4 deep wood Nahida, you can just like, then Baichu is always the best option. Like, that's basically how I feel. But assuming you are building GT Nahida, then and like one of these 3 has to be the deep wood holder, then in AoE Yao Yao would be fantastic. So point is, in Nahida teams, I don't think Kirara really has much of a place in Nahida teams, I don't think Kirara really has much of a place. Fine option again, casual clears, blah blah blah, but not exactly optimal. And that brings me to my next part, which is, what else do you want to run for double Dendro without Nahida, right? And it's, optimally speaking, there's almost no option. Like, Tunari is complete garbage. Nahida obviously isn't involved. Yao Yao is, I mean, yeah, it's worth considering sometimes in that double Dendro. Same with Kirara, same with Baichu. Emily's garbage. Kinich is fun, but I'll get into why I don't think Kirara is that good for him. And then Kalei is also, actually wait, if you have no Nahida, yeah, no, I forgot. Yeah, see, the team building restrictions with Kalei, yeah, it's not that good. Actually, let's cover her briefly. Why is Kalei not good? Oh, because you're not running Nahida, and then who can your defensive option be? Yao Yao, Kirara, or Baichu, right? And then none of these will ever be better than running than like Nahida with a defensive Hydro. So like that means that when you have to take out Nahida, there's actually no point in ever running Kalei. Kaveh, honestly, for all intents and purposes, Kaveh is literally just the worst item. The only time when it isn't the case is when you want to break a cryo shield. Traveler suffers the same issue as Kalei. Traveler's a lot like Kalei in a lot of senses, actually. And it's a lot worse because, well, not a lot worse, but it is worse, I would say. Okay, but that brings us to Haitham and Kinich, right? Let's go over Kinich quickly because there's less to talk about him. Kinich wants Baichu, or like if you don't have Baichu. Okay, well, once by Drew. Because the truth is, Kinich, like obviously when you run with him with Nilou and Baichu, then wow, who do you want your last character to be? It's gonna be Farina, it's gonna be talent damage. It's a talent damage team. And in this, at C0, I think it's probably undisputably his best talent damage team. It's just that the grouping of it is extremely cringe. The AoE of it is really questionable. And you have to kind of jump through hoops for it. I recently did one run on it. Oh my god, fucking horrible. Like, not that it was impossible, but just really dumb. Like, if you notice on top 2, my fucking Farina crab had to 4 damage kill one of the mushrooms, and then Kinich literally had to like specifically get 2 of them charging at him, freeze them in their tracks, and then manual blast them, so on and so forth. The AoE of this team is like, it's not impossible to deal with, but it's like really, really cancer. But in my opinion, if you are looking purely at a single target scenario, it's probably it's a really good team. There's like no question about that. And here's the funny thing, right? If you don't want Baichu and you want Yao Yao, it's just worse, right? Because again, like in these teams, you can't really afford to give Yao Yao few time and then her E, like first off, her AoE becomes somewhat worse because then you don't have that period of time where like, unless the AoE isn't that big, right? Because then you kind of need her to like, then you're relying on the big radish, and the big radish like, comes after a bit, right? Like, it's not like on initial cast you immediately fire the big rabbit. Whatever, yeah, because she only fires it after 3, so like so before then, like you kind of like in AoE, like you kind of want to cast her out, but you also don't want to cast her out in a team where like you have a Dendro on fielder, so where you already have an on fielder, so it's not as good as Baichu. But one exception to this would be if you have C2 Farina, where if you have C2 Farina in single target, because then here's the idea where like the C2 Farina, like number 1 obviously, like, then it matters less that Baichu can stack fanfare more quickly, less by the way, because here's the thing, right? A lot of people think that C2 Farina like can already stack really well on its own without a healer, and therefore when you add a healer, it's like even easier to get fanfare, right? And that's true, but when the healer is not a party healer, like in most cases, sure, C2 Farina, you get enough fanfare to stack. But look at this goddamn team. You have 3 HP scalers. Farina's like probably on 40k HP. Yao Yao, you also want to build full HP. Nilou's at like 75k HP. Do you understand that like even Baichu is 10k flat healing, like, or Nilou is like 13 fanfare? It's atrocious. The only person who can stack any actual decent amount of fanfare on this team is Kinich. And like later Haitham, right? But actually no, I don't think Haitham Farina is that worth playing, but that later. So yeah, it is kind of like, so the idea of no healer, or rather like single target healer compared to party healer, like with C2 Farina, like generally there's not that much of a difference once you have C2 Farina, right? Because you'll stack fanfare either way. In this team, there is that difference. I have to like make that real quick disclaimer. And you don't want to on-field Yao Yao, right? Because obviously it is just not, I mean I've already explained it, right? So Baichu is a lot better in this slot, no matter how you look at it. Like even, and like, it's already a single target team. No one's gonna be like, oh, but your AoE deep word application will suck. And it's like, this team sucks in AoE. Like you forget deep word. It's already such a pain in the neck to play in AoE. Okay. Anyways, now that, so let's not involve Farina for now. And then, even though I think that is like undisputably the best teammate you could have here, but if you don't involve Farina and you play something more that actually applies more hydro like Xingqiu, right? Then would Kirara be a good option? And the answer is kind of, I guess. But then I have to warn you that Kinich doesn't really proc Xingqiu that much, so your damage from Xingqiu's blooms isn't that great. Because you have to understand that when Kinich does like N2, like the second normal is always fast enough that Xingqiu E would, Xingqiu out doesn't actually like go off. And yeah, so like you don't get as many procs, and then obviously Kinich spends a lot of time in his E or like in his out or whatever godforsaken garbage. So like, will this team work? On one hand kind of, on the other hand your bloom gen is so shit, just play Farina. I don't see why not. Like, and Farina's so great, just great. And also, actually no, I don't want to get into Yelan there, that probably deserves its own video, but there's a reason why I almost never recommend Yelan. Anyway, so yeah, so that's Kinich for you, right? Where it's like Xingqiu doesn't work that well, so you end up just playing Furina, and then who do you want with Furina? A fucking party healer. Especially because 3 of your 4 members of your team are HP scalers. And then you stack FanFest lowest. Oh fuck. Okay, and now let's get back to Haitham, right? So Haitham, Kirara, Yao. So Haitham, Kirara, Yao, Baichu. That's your 3 options when it comes to Haitham, right? And let me say out of the gate, Xingqiu is undeniably, I think, his best teammate here. Unless you're like incredibly high invest where talent damage just starts mattering so that much or whatever bullshit. Which one I don't even know why you're playing Haitham in this team. In fact, actually I don't even want to know why you're playing Haitham at high invest. It's like if you care about times, it's a horrible idea, but like he does. And also, actually no, why would you play Haitham at high invest? That's my question. When I ask, like the playstyle is the exact fucking same. Like of Haitham himself at least. Like maybe the team isn't when you have like a fucking C6 Furina or C6 Yelan blasting away their normal attacks, or like a C6 Nahida or whatever bullshit, but Haitham himself never changes. At least as far as I'm concerned. But yeah, so in the scenario where you want, so there's not really that much of a point running Furina. Yelan's uptime is worse and she doesn't really have great hydro application either. It's like 1 per 3 waves and then she doesn't have the hospitals that Xingqiu has. And then you ask yourself, oh, who is the best teammate here? And the answer is Kirara and Baichu are like actually pretty damn close, but this goes to Kirara because in single target, then the Kirara C4 is easier, it's faster to proc than trying to like get off a fucking Baichu out. And then yeah, you lose the healing, but again, I said that you have to jump through hoops, not that it's completely impossible for you to jump through those hoops. And once you get over that, then Kirara is a really good option in that single target scenario where her C4 can like go off and she can provide interruption resistance. Interruption resistance, yes. And then Yao Yao's a less great idea again because again this time you don't want deep wood Haitham, you want deep wood on your second Dendro. And Yao Yao's that much worse of an option because Gregory is just too low in it because Gregory is a bit too fucking slow for the healing, right? And you cannot afford to ever on-field Yao Yao, and then her AoE is still better than Kirara's, but again, Kirara does have her ult. Wait, I love this music, by the way. Again, a tangent, but yeah. But yeah, basically it's just the idea of it's largely the idea of like giving as much free time to Haitham in this case as possible, and then in single target it works. I think I would argue to be better, like to be just as okay, maybe not better, but it's just as good debut art time as Yao Yao, and then the defensive utility of it is first off more reliable because a shield prevents you from getting nuked, unlike heals, right? You get interruption resistance as well. And the thing about the reliability that she has in this team that in other teams she doesn't is that like the same would apply to other teams if it wasn't for the fact that Yao Yao can easily on-field in other teams or like actually and yeah, that Yao Yao can easily on-field in other teams and like Baichu is just a really good defensive unit. There's no way around that. Like you can make all the mistakes you want on him and it doesn't really matter. Just suffer in the AoE again, but you worst case scenario, just back to playing Yao Yao, put fucking 40 wood on Nahida, just see as the situation's there. But oh my fucking god. But Kirara, okay. So Kirara, in some senses, is pretty similar to Yao. You can somewhat consider them side grades in this team, but the issue again is that I don't really think that Yao's E has particularly great, what do you call it, healing capabilities in itself. Like, I don't know why that took me so long to like bring up, but yes, the healing itself by Yao, like if only her white jade radish, it is not exactly fantastic when you're eating like Xingqiu levels of boom generation, right? And so if you don't out on Yao, I don't know, you better be like playing goddamn perfectly, or like you have elemental resistance better than. And so in that sense, Kirara is better for this team. And again, this team is flexible enough that you can like swap into Kirara whenever you need a shield, which I'm pretty sure it's like a 10% cooldown. Sugar scaling. Shield, oh wait, no, yeah, 12-second cooldown. Oh wait, no, 8-second cooldown with 12-second shield duration, yeah. Oh yeah, right, that's another thing I forgot to mention. Her shield uptime is a lot better as well, because you can, worst case scenario, which it shouldn't happen, but her shield refreshes pretty damn fast. And also I think, actually, again, this is where like my enhancement with Kirara comes in. I'm pretty sure that if you have to, you can stack her shield. And it's weird, but oh my god, yeah, she can literally just stack her shield, yeah. Which makes it, okay, which like further adds to that reliability, but yes, the point is that even if somehow, okay, so her defensive utility for this kind of team, it is better than Yao if you don't Yao out, right? And let's say even if somehow you don't Yao out and it's enough, then what reason is there really to, then yes, technically Yao would be as good, but you can't. Very simple. And then, another thing is that Kirara's AoE, which I did say that has its limits, at least it exists, right? And that's like where it comes better than Baichu. Because Baichu then solves that issue where like Yao has, which like requires Yao to on-field to heal effectively, and so you think, oh, why don't I just play Baichu instead, right? And to be fair, you can, like it is pretty efficient, especially in single target. But then when it comes to AoE, then like when it comes to single target, you can argue that Baichu is like more comfortable because the healing is more valuable than the shield in terms of the long term. Although that's to say that you can make a shield work, it's just a bit more troublesome. But then what do you get out of Baichu? Like about the same single target in terms of deal application. Your healing is better, your defensive utility could be better, but also could not. Also, if played ideally, wouldn't be better. Then at least when you play Kirara, then you have that AoE to work with right? And then her picking out like the cluster bomb, it lasts for so long. I'm pretty sure, like what, 12 seconds. So if not all of it hits, there is like some amount of multi-wave to it as well. But even if not all of it hits. Another thing about it previously was that, yeah, you can also, is that if you're, how do I say? Again, I think it's still worse than Yao purely in AoE, but Yao won't be enough now because you want to give few time to Haitham, so forget Yao for now. So her having that, so now it's just a comparison between her and Baichu. So when you compare her to Baichu, like her having that AoE is actually pretty huge in a lot of situations. It gives her that degree of versatility even though you have to trade off healing for it. Which is why I think that this is just a really good team. And this is why I think that in terms of Kirara's best team, like this is basically Kirara's team in Nilou team. I think this is like basically undeniably her best and basically only one where she is best at. But I do want to go over the team a bit, which is that it is like this team would be the old one, right? Where like, yeah, like where it's like Yao is like extremely, how do I say, finicky to play, and that's why Kirara is that much better. And like finicky to play while not even being better than Kirara, so Kirara is better, but yeah. And then also their buffs are mostly the same, it's like what, 3% damage, and then Yao has to use Fav, and then Kirara like probably also uses Fav, but sometimes you can use the Sword of Naru's something. I love that sword, by the way. It was so handy in a not 3-pointer. 4.6. Yes, the 4.6 of it. Bloody hell, that's always handy. Okay, anyway. What was I saying? Right, okay. But I do have to cover that. One issue is that as flexible as the rest of the team is, Haitham isn't as flexible as he ideally would be, even though he is very flexible. I attributed it to that thing. Because Haitham is, how do I say? Your off-field dendron, which is Kirara, isn't great. It's good enough for applying deep wood, that's realistically all it is. But Haitham himself, if he doesn't have 3, from what I know, if he doesn't have 3 mirrors, I don't think he can consistently sustain Singtiel. And so that means that, I think largely with Haitham, how he works is that his E will give you 2 mirrors and his CA will give you 1 mirror at a set cooldown. And his E only gives you 2 mirrors if you have no mirror, so that means you want to swap between him like one time, like one session of 3 mirrors is because of his Q and the next session of mirrors is because of his E and his CA. And then that will help to sustain Singtiel a lot. I think that's generally how it goes. And yeah, I need to stop losing my train of thought. So it's not like this team doesn't have its limitations, which is also kind of why I am not that in favor of it, because when you start taking away flexibility, it's like I don't mind taking away flexibility, but I don't like to like having to meet a compromise. If I do then it's like unless that flexibility really comes through, then it's really like you want to think of it as very binary, you know, because sometimes the flexibility will come true, but most of the time you rather just take one or the other, and in that sense, like I like Kidditch a lot more. But this isn't a video about Kidditch. This is a video about Kirara and by extension Haitham. And yeah, so her best. This is basically the only Nilou team I think she can be really said to be worth playing in, at least from what I have experienced. Even though what I have experienced was a fucking level 70 Haitham with this team. It's really fun, but whatever. It was on a friend's account. They never built their Haitham properly, and I built their Kirara for like other reasons. Anyways, yes. So this is Kirara's best team. I really like it a lot, but it is worth noting that it does have its own drawbacks, like such as Haitham kind of not being as flexible as you would like him to be, and another one obviously being the fact that you are playing. Oh right. This is my main gripe with Haitham, is that you are playing like a guy with so much EM scalings in a team where he's doing mono damage, which is like my biggest gripe with this team. Like as good as like it is as solid, or not as good, as solid as it is in a lot of situations. Like you wouldn't believe. Like I think I mentioned in the previous video, he loses like 30-something% compared to his usual spread teams. Like at the same cost, by the way. And it's like, oh my god, it is so. It is really questionable. It is really damn questionable. That is, you really can't even deny that. And that comes in, and then because he's affected by it, therefore Kirara is affected, like by the fact that this team, like as much as it likes that talent damage, which she does buff, right? Which Kirara does buff, like, you have to acknowledge that like Haitham isn't as flexible as you would like him to be, and he's like dealing like jack shit damage, and that's a big issue too, you know, like because like in a lot of his best teams, like when you don't have C2 Nahida, like when you don't have C2 Nahida proccing like the death threat aspect of it. Like holy shit, that is a reason why why so many people actually call him overhyped. Like in this team, like his damage isn't insignificant, nor can it really be said to be bad. But like you're playing Haitham because he has like good on-field Dendro application, and that's really it. And then it also suffers from this issue where like, oh, the moment your Dendro off-fielder is off, like you stop generating blooms, and it's really punishing again because Haitham cannot like simply like just on-field and instantly get 3 mirrors. There is like a set like you can only do that once every so often, right? Because otherwise your cooldowns will go off, and oh my god. Yeah, so it's like then that calls into question his flexibility, and then again like Xingqiu is just dealing a lot of the damage, right? Because of his own bloom. And I'll keep in mind Xingqiu is always on an EM build in this team. So yeah, Haitham isn't as flexible as you want. Because Kirara is involved. Okay, let's line up my train of thought. Kirara is involved in a Haitham team. And what are the drawbacks of a Haitham team? Or rather, okay, well, the pros of a Haitham team is that they are great in single target. And I prefer Kinich in that sense, but Kirara video. But if you want to play them, nothing wrong with that. But you have to acknowledge that it isn't that Haitham loses a big amount of his flexibility because you need 3 mirrors. You cannot just say like, oh, I'll just have 2 mirrors for this part. Like maybe you can have 2 mirrors a bit after the 3 mirrors part, but you cannot maintain it for long. And then, I mean, sometimes you can get lucky with like Kirara or whatever bullshit. But if Xingqiu out is active and there's a C6 Xingqiu, no, pretty rough, man. And then, I mean, I guess if you're never mind. And then again, like you have to acknowledge that you are putting an EM scaler on a team where he's dealing mono damage. So you have to acknowledge that there's like pretty significant damage loss in that. And I'm talking like 30% damage loss from like what I recall of like a rough simulation. And I know that, and like yes, you cannot simulate a Nilou team, but can I simulate Haitham's personal damage on a Nilou team? Yes, and that is roughly what it comes out to when you compare it to his Fred team. So that's basically Kirara Haitham, Kirara and therefore Haitham for you. Any questions, I can try and answer them just as the previous video if you haven't already seen. Because there's only one person watching these, right? So if you haven't already seen that comment that I replied to you, if you have any further questions on that as well, I am willing to answer, blah blah blah. But yeah, Kirara has one team, this is it, and I've listed out basically just about anything that is to be listed out in this team. Also, one last thing, both Sec and Cyphos are really good on Xingqiu, but I like Sec a lot more flexible. But in this team, it might not. In this team, I think it might just be Cyphos because flexibility is rough with this team as is. So